Hello and welcome to Nerd vs. World, episode 85, Atomic Nerd. I'm Brendan.
And I'm Spindles.
And on today's show, we've got movie reviews for Atomic Blonde and The Big Sick. Spindles has got the lowdown on the 9 Worlds and Arthur C Clarke Awards. And then there's some reaction to that Game of Thrones episode. Woohoo! Well, it's been a while since we've spoken, so let's catch up with 9 Worlds. I want to hear all about what you got up to.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I haven't been for a couple of years. Obviously, in the time since I last went, they've shifted venues. So they've moved away from the Radisson in Heathrow, which wasn't the best of venues, and they're now in the Novotel West London in Hammersmith, which was excellent. It's fantastically well set up for conventions. They've got kind of 3 floors. The top floor and the bottom floor have a couple of little meeting room type things where some of the smaller panels were. And then they've got a big kind of central bar area with 2 sets of rooms off to the side that can be kind of shuttered as big or as small as you want them. So that was the kind of main congregating area there. So it was wonderfully set out. Everything was in one place. There was no trolling down to the arse end of nowhere to find the steampunk room. It was all quite sane. So yeah, basically I did a couple of panels myself. I went and saw a whole bunch of panels. There's some really interesting ones. First one, who did I say? I saw a talk given by Pat Cadigan, who was awesome. I also started out with an interesting one on the hacker ethic using watchdogs as an example. So the way it worked was describing kind of what the hacker mindset is by using watchdogs. So rather than is watchdogs an accurate representation of hacking in the real world? The answer to which is of course no. It was about how game players hack the game to make it better, or make it better for themselves. Because I don't know how much you know about Watch Dogs, but there's a point in the game where other people invade your game. So they take on a kind of NPC role and start scanning you, and you don't know they're there until you get scanned, and then you get an alert and you've got to find them. And there's kind of an elaborate game of hide and seek takes place where you have to find them and scan them, otherwise they win.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so what it was talking about was kind of different levels of people playing the game. So when you're hacking the game, you'll find that there are certain areas of the game where it looks like a hedge and it doesn't actually exist. So you can walk right into the hedge and you can crouch in it, and therefore you disappear from view. So the person looking for you can't ever find you because you're sat in a hedge. And then it goes up to other levels of if you shoot at a particular wall in the game actually thinks it's glass, and so it breaks that, and then you can walk straight into it and end up inside the superstructure of the building, which is a glitch in the game. There are other things by bomb jumps, so blowing yourself up with grenades will fire you in the air because there's no jump button in the game, so you can't jump on top of things, but you can blow yourself up and end up in areas that you're not supposed to be in the game by blowing yourself up in the air, and thus making it impossible for the other player to find you. And then the kind of ultimate nerd level of hacking, the hacker mindset, is sticking a Linux box in front of your PlayStation, running basically network capturing software, network monitoring, and then as soon as it detects an incoming ping from outside, you know that someone's invaded your game and can thus then deal with them. So it's, that was a really interesting talk. And then, a whole bunch of other ones. But again, another really interesting one. And for long-time listeners of the show, this will be a welcome return because it was the Lunatics on Mars. One of the final 100 candidates for the Mars One mission was there talking about it all.
No, well, I missed it.
Yeah, man.
Oh, fuck.
So yes, it was someone called Hannah Earnshaw, who is one of the last 100 candidates who is up for the Mars One mission. Now, I believe how she explained it is there are going to be 6 crews of 4 who are going to be the final crews. So there are 100 people in contention for 24
places.
places. So yeah, she was giving a massive update on how it's all going to work, and some of it that we said in the outset is exactly right. They are still kind of funding it on intellectual property of things they're inventing for it, and the whole kind of reality TV aspect of it.
Yeah.
When it gets to the final selection process, that they're then going to start televising it all, their training, and then them actually shipping off to Mars.
Man, that's a deep callback to like one of our first 5 episodes, I think.
It was our first episode.
Was it number 1?
Yeah,
Jeez.
It was actually our first episode. That's what I mean for long-term listeners of the show. So Mars One continues apace, and we will continue to bring you updates on it as and when we hear them. But it was very interesting to hear. She had a lot of... she was explaining kind of her decision-making process and actually wanting to go forward to it on what she understands is a one-way mission. And it was interesting to hear her talk about her mindset and her decision-making process in it, give a little bit more detail about kind of how things are going to happen, sending rovers up and sending capsules up that will sit there, and then the rovers will start generating oxygen and water and things on the surface. Oddly, well, probably not as a surprise, she cited The Martian as one of her favourite films now.
Fair enough.
So I'm just hoping that it won't go quite as badly for them as it did in that.
Well, as long as she's brushed up on how to grow potatoes in a Martian environment.
Well, indeed, and that's the thing is that they've got. I think that they're planning to send. I think it's 2030. I think they said that they were sending the first actual manned mission off. So they've got like 13 years to learn all the things they need to know to survive on Mars. And that's what they'll do once they've gone through the final selection process.
But what specific skill set is she taking to the program?
Well, she has a background in astronomy. So okay. I mean, the way they've described it is they're not looking for specific skill sets. What they're looking for is a survival mindset, which is all very interesting. And then it'll be, a crew of 6 crews of 4 that will be gender balanced and presumably have some kind of weighting in terms of what skills they have to bring. And it'll be phased over at least every 2 years. They're sending out a new crew.
Interesting. Well,
so all very, very, very interesting. There were questions around kind of, would they be colonizing it and having children and stuff? And that was the interesting response on that was saying, well, no, they have science to stop them having children. So regardless of what happens, they're not planning on procreating on Mars for at least 50 years.
But they have science to prevent them from having children.
So, well, essentially, they'll be using some form of either chemical contraception or something like that to stop anyone getting pregnant.
Okay. Yeah. Well.
So
yeah. Unless they're sending a doctor up there, it's probably for the best, right?
Well, indeed. And if you think about it, if it does happen, there will be like one kid, and it will be the one kid on Mars, and there'll be no infrastructure for them. There won't be schools. There won't be babysitters. It's just, the whole thing just sounds still utterly crazy.
So what was her motivation for wanting to go?
Well, I think she just decided that she wanted to explore. She was interested in astronomy when she was a kid. She wanted to be an astronaut, and then that kind of stuck in her mind. And then, basically, it was just the opportunity to be able to go out and do it and be one of those first people pushing back new boundaries.
Fair enough. Couldn't get me up there for love nor money.
Well, God, no. Well, no, it did. And right at the very start, she went, how many of you could actually stand up and say that you would go on a one-way mission to Mars. And in all fairness, there was a crowd of maybe about 200 people there, and only about 4 or 5 put their hands up. Everybody else was just like, nope.
Yeah. Oh, well.
So, yes, there was that. Then a whole bunch of other stuff. I did a panel on LARP, and that was great. And, yeah, nice shout out to Joe and Toby for coming along, who I've known for over 15 years, and they listened to me talk rubbish about LARP at the best of times and have done for 15 years. So the fact they decided to come along and listen to me doing it again at a panel was really quite nice.
Yeah, my Facebook flashbacks this week were all about 2 years ago at Nine Worlds. I kind of missed it. We missed it last year for obvious reasons. I did Star Wars Celebration, so I couldn't afford 2 cons. And then missed it again this year because no job, no money. Yeah. So I was just living vicariously through the posts of everybody on Facebook and through my old posts from 2 years ago. It's reminded of my dodgy internet in my room. Kept cutting out, so dancing around Taylor Swift on YouTube. Playing musical statues when it cut off. But yeah, that was years ago.
So yeah, it was good fun. I mean, again, it's a wonderful event that's so massively diverse in its content as well as the people who are there that I doubt any individual person would have the same experience as any other individual at that con because there's just so much choice.
Yeah, that's what I found a couple of years ago.
I mean, it's all slightly different now, so it's not organised in tracks anymore. There are just rooms and then there are panels.
Okay.
So there are lots of different things that they're all just essentially tagged with keywords as to what their content is about. So there are some podcasting talks, but then there are also a whole bunch of other stuff. There isn't a whole track devoted to podcasting.
Right, okay. So that's a bit of a change. What else had changed from a couple of years ago, aside from the obvious location?
I think the panels were more organised, so it was slots, so all the panels ran at the same time. So they all started at like 10, ran for an hour till 11, then there was 45 minutes until the next panel. So you had enough time in between to go and get food or do whatever you wanted to do before you got to the next one. So they were all organised very, very well. So it worked very well for the attendees. The hotel, I think, probably didn't like it so much because it was dead for an hour, then utter chaos for half an hour, then dead for an hour, then utter chaos. So, but yeah, I loved it. Other highlights of my weekend was the Twin Peaks discussion group that I went to on the Friday night. That was absolutely wonderful. So, yeah, shout out to you guys if you're listening, because they said they were going to come and try and catch up on the show, especially the episode with me explaining Twin Peaks to you, you having not seen Twin Peaks. So, yeah, that was great.
I've noticed a spike in our iTunes listens for that show today, actually, so that must be there.
There you go. There you go, then, yeah. So a bunch of them said they'd go off and have a listen to it. So, yeah, that was a great discussion group, and we were all talking about what it means, and essentially we've all come out going, it's bloody awesome. Still have no clue what's going on, though. So, yeah, it's a fantastic con, and, you know, I would urge anyone to go along to it, because I'm sure you will find something to keep you entertained for the entire weekend. There's just so much choice.
Awesome. Yeah, go check it out. I can vouch for it to the extent that I went a couple of years ago and it was awesome. So, yeah. Cool. And then on to the Arthur C Clarke Awards for you as well.
Yes. So this was an interesting one that Emma asked if we could go along to it because Emma Newman was there. Yeah. So Emma Newman was nominated for the award this year with After Atlas.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we got tickets. We went along. It was in, is it called Forbes? I can't remember. Foyles, the massive bookshop on Charing Cross Road. So it was in the top level of that in the function room. And, yeah, it was all fun. We just went along, had a couple of glasses of wine. They did a presentation. Another guest from our show, Alan Stroud, was there, who won an award for a short story that he wrote.
Amazing.
So it was lovely to catch up with him and just have a chat, and he's up for coming back on the show at any point.
We had a very interesting discussion. It was after Nine Worlds a couple of years ago, wasn't it, in fact?
It was indeed, because we met him at Nine Worlds 2 years ago.
Had a great chat about cultural spread in the digital age.
Mm.
I had that podcast cut up and put onto the portal where I used to work, so students could actually listen to it and reference it in their essays and stuff, because it was actually really, really pertinent to what we were studying at the time. So.
Yeah. So, yes, that was really good. We went along, and sadly Emma didn't win, but the award went to Colson Whitehead for The Underground Railroad, which I have since purchased on Audible, was about to listen to it, but then the next book of the Bobbyverse came out, and I'm now back in the Bobbyverse.
Bobbyverse?
Have you not come across the Bobbyverse yet?
No.
Dennis Taylor, a series of books about a software engineer who dies and gets resurrected as a von Neumann probe.
No, haven't come across it.
So yeah, he's an AI who then goes out into space as a von Neumann probe and creates copies of himself and basically populates galaxies. So it's a wonderful series of books. I think that I don't know if they're actually available as physical books. I think they're Audible only.
Oh, okay.
But they're absolutely fantastic. Me being a software engineer, I can totally understand where a lot of it is coming from.
Fair enough. Okay, cool.
So it's what would happen if someone with a brain like mine is turned into an AI and sent off into the galaxy with the ability to self-replicate.
Okay, I'll keep an ear out for it.
It's very, very good. But yeah, sorry, I digress. So the Underground Railroad one, I've got that. It's on my list. I will listen to it eventually. I will get there. But it just seems like the Arthur C Clarke Award just seems to have been popping up all over the place for the last few weeks, because obviously at Nine Worlds, Adrian Tchaikovsky was there, who won last year and was there presenting this year. And Pat Cadigan was there, who's won it twice. So yeah, it was just it's interesting. It keeps popping up on after the first time I've ever actually gone to the ceremony.
Cool.
So yes, all very, very good.
Nice and busy.
Very, 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 very busy. And I've got this weekend to prepare, and then I've got Rami visiting. So Ram from the Wonky Gamer cast is coming down to visit. And then the weekend after that, we're off to Weekend at the Asylum.
Okay. More cons.
So,
yeah.
Steampunking in Lincoln.
Yeah. Awesome. I have, on the contrast, had a rather lazy couple of weeks. Plenty of time to watch films. So...
Go on then. So what have you seen, sir?
Well, we'll start off with the one I saw today. So I saw Atomic Blonde today at the previews this morning.
This is the Charlize Theron one, is it?
Yeah. So it's incredibly slick, incredibly stylish. It's a very sexy film, but it's ultimately, I think, a little hollow. So the basic premise is that Charlize Theron is an MI6 agent tasked with recovering a list of agents that has been stolen from a fallen MI6 agent in Berlin, in East Berlin, during the end of the Berlin Wall era. So it's that sort of time frame, and it's all about her getting the list back and trusting no one, and sort of spy shenanigans. So it's essentially a Cold War spy drama, and an action film mashed together, but they've kind of gone a little bit wrong, from my point of view at least, in the ratio. It seems to be 70-30 in favour of action, and actually the narrative and the story of the spy drama is rather unsubtle, so it's not kind of what you think from a spy drama. It looks great, and the actors do what they can with the characters they're given, but the characters are all rather 2D. Like, there's no depth to any of the characters. The twists are signposted. The end feels... Well, it feels like it could have finished 15 minutes earlier and had a decent sort of cliffhanger type of ending, making you ask your own questions as you left. But instead, they then answer the questions. And there's a big reveal, which is kind of a bit rubbish. So in terms of the story, like, it had potential to be something more than it was, but it failed. But in terms of the action, on the other hand, it's excellent. Some of the action set pieces are incredible. There's a fight scene towards the end when Charlize Theron takes on 4 or 5 KGB agents, choreography of which is absolutely fantastic. I think Charlize Theron put a lot of effort into doing her own stunt work, and you can kind of tell in that they're not relying on shaky cam to obscure the principal face, So it's a lot freer in that regards. It's probably going to be a template for action sequences in the future. They hold nothing back in terms of how visceral it is. Her makeup throughout the film, so the way it's the plot device they use is that the film is told via her debriefing. So she's brought in and she's debriefed at the beginning, and then the entire film is basically her debriefing with cuts back to present day to ask questions in this exposition a little bit. But yeah, the scars build up over the course of a film, and they don't try and hide it. They don't go like, "Oh, it's been a couple of days, that Hollywood scar would have gone." They keep it there. It's all very visible, and in that regard, it's really well done. Some of the shot selection I thought was particularly interesting. I'm never one for noticing it usually, but there's an awful lot of close-ups. So there's a conversation between John Goodman, who's a CIA handler, and Charlize Theron on the Berlin Wall at one point. And I noticed watching it that actually the entire shot is framed as just their face.
Mm-hmm.
And it's back and forth, so it's just John Goodman's face, Charlize Theron's face, which I imagine is a callback to the comic that it's based on.
Okay.
I've not read it, but it looked framed like a comic panel.
Yeah.
So that would be my guess for sure. Yeah, like it's.
I guess to me it sounds like it's another Eon Flux.
Oh, I haven't seen Eon Flux, so I can't really comment on the direct comparison.
Right, okay. Because it again, this was like what, maybe 10 years ago, and it's Charlize Theron and Johnny Lee Miller and a whole bunch of others. And it's based on an MTV animation from the 90s about Eon Flux, who keeps getting killed and coming back as a clone of herself. And it was kind of shiny, stylish action sci-fi, but with very little substance or characterization.
Yeah, well, in that regard, yeah, it's the Cold War spy drama version of that. Then I guess, it looks incredible, and I think. From that point of view, the soundtrack, the vibe, the action, they're all high points for it. You can't really fault that at all. But the actual story itself is so unnuanced, it's untrue. it's right. So plain. I mean, it's worth a watch. It's not a bad movie, but it feels like there's a much better movie in there trying to get out.
Right.
If you know
okay.
What I mean.
So you kind of Saturday evening bubblegum movie.
Yeah, like it's maybe a little more engaging than most of your disposable Hollywood action flicks at the moment, but only marginally so. I think people are calling it like the female John Wick. It's not quite. I think John Wick is quite a protected character in his particular films, and they're entertaining on a completely different level to how this would be entertaining. So
no, I love the John Wick movies. I have them both. I think they're fantastic.
So do I. But they are very obviously simple stories focusing on set pieces.
Can't get enough Keanu in that role.
And I think if Atomic Blonde skirted a little closer to that, it would have been a better film. But it's trying to do two things. It's doing one thing really, really well. But
which is the action scenes.
Yeah, which is the action sequences. But the story itself is very simple, very formulaic. Which in itself isn't a bad thing. But when one thing's done so well, that the fallback on the narrative is a bit of an issue.
Okay.
So I'm going to say 7 out of 10.
Okay.
7 out of 10, because there's enough in there to make it watchable and nothing there that I didn't feel like I'd wasted my money going to the cinema to see it.
Yeah,
But,
I mean that's pretty good. I mean, from the way you're talking about it, I would have thought it was around a 5 or a 6. So
no, well,
I'd be happy with a 7. I'd watch that.
Yeah, it's definitely watchable. But yeah,
Because
cool.
Eon Flux, I would put it like a 4 or a 5.
Okay, well, I won't watch that then. I think I was actually working at a cinema when that came out, though.
Yeah, I think that's maybe because I loved the original animation and I just hated the version.
Yeah, well, I'm giving it the 7 because of Charlize Theron. I think she is a female action hero. She keeps reinventing herself as that, and yeah.
Cool. Okay,
good film.
Next
good
up.
film. Good film. Okay, so the next one then is The Big Sick, which is an entirely different proposition altogether.
I know nothing about this movie.
I've really had to work hard to try and track this film down as well because it only got a limited release. So it's basically based on more or less on a true story of Kamal Nanjiani and his wife Emily and how they got together. So very simply, the plot of the story is that Kamal Nanjiani plays himself. He plays a stand-up comedian called Kamal Nanjiani in the film. And he meets Emily one night after a stand-up show he's doing, and the two of them hit it off, and they start forming a relationship. But then he's dealing with the pressures of his traditional Pakistani Muslim family and their expectations for marriage for him, and that conflict causes Emily and Kamal to break up. And a couple of days after they break up, Emily falls sick and is put into medicated coma, and that's when Kamal, who was already Kamal was scared about losing his family by telling them about Emily, and that's when he comes to realize that actually Emily's more important and that he has to take some risks, and he kind of works all this through with Emily's parents, who come down to be by her bedside while she's in this coma. Of course, they already know that they've broken up, so it's kind of frosty to start off with. But Emily's parents, who are Ray Romano and Holly Hunter, are going through their own sort of trust issues at that time, so they can kind of relate on different levels. So it's a really nice dynamic to the three of them figuring out actually what's important. And the performances are incredible. Like, I've never seen Ray Romano play it straight, but he plays it really, really well. And Holly Hunter is... well, she's always been one of my favourites, and she's just fierce in this again. So it goes through that. Then obviously Emily wakes up from her coma, and it's then her finding out about Kamal's change and the reluctantly getting together again. It's just a really, really lovely, bittersweet comedy with some tremendous performances. And you know what I'm like? I'm an absolute sucker for anything that makes me happy cry or sad cry.
Yeah, definitely.
So you're never really sure whether it's going to be going towards the sort of 500 Days of Summer, learn something by loss sort of ending, or the happy ever after ending. And it kind of plays it really well. But I loved it. It's a comedy, a very bittersweet comedy, I think. But yeah, it was well worth tracking down.
Cool.
Like,
and the rating?
The rating, it's possibly my film of the year.
Ooh, bloody hell.
Like, it made me laugh. It got me really invested. 1 second. The lass who plays Emily, is Zoe Kazan, was in another film I loved called In Your Eyes, which is on Netflix at the moment, so you should check that out. I fell in love with the film. And I love it. I love it when a film does that for me. So it's really
especially
hard
when it comes out of nowhere. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I was hearing reports from America about it, and obviously The View weren't showing it locally. The Odeon weren't showing it locally. Empire Cinema, who was my go-to at the moment, they weren't showing it when it came out. And I couldn't see screenings anywhere. I was like, I want to see this film so much. It sounds right up my street. Especially the coping with sickness in the family, given everything in the last couple of years. So, yeah, eventually it got a delayed release at the Empire. So I went to that, and yeah, just absolutely fell in love. Such a wonderful film.
Awesome.
And I think it plays to the actors' strengths. The comedy, the stand-up is all done by stand-up comedians who are close to Kamal. It's just brilliant. So yeah, it's definitely going to be in the running come December for my film of the year. It's one of the best I've seen so far.
Well, there's still loads to come. We're only halfway through the year.
I know, and there's to be fair, there's a few knocking on the door already. Like there's a couple of contenders. Colossal is still up there for me, but I think this Pip's Colossal. So
still got Valerian and a few others to go.
See, I didn't go around to seeing that yet. I will see it because it's Luc Besson. But yeah, so in terms of rating, I'm gonna give The Big Sick the full 10 out of 10.
Sweet.
Just because it did everything that I want from a movie for me.
Awesome.
So, yeah, and Zoe Kazan is my crush of the week. Just
Brendan's crush of the week.
Yeah. If you haven't seen In Your Eyes, you should definitely get on Netflix and watch that as well, because that's a great film. It's a Joss Whedon penned script about two they become lovers from across the USA. Is that your Skype or my Skype?
I have no idea. Somebody came online somewhere.
So what happens is these characters suddenly start seeing what the other person is seeing, and they think they're like having kind of like a stroke or something's going wrong. But so she starts seeing what he's seeing in his life in the arse end of nowhere, living in a trailer, and he starts seeing what she's seeing. And then eventually they work out what's going on, and yeah, the love story unfolds without them ever actually meeting. They just meet through looking into a mirror so they can see who they're looking through. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's a weird film, but Joss Whedon wrote it, I think, and Jed Whedon did some work on the soundtrack. But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's my film.
Awesome.
I also saw The Founder as well. It was not at the cinema, but I watched that recently, and that's the story of McDonald's, with Michael Keaton playing Ray Kroc, and it's all about how the franchise was started and how he stole the idea and the name from the actual founders and everything.
Yeah.
And for a film about McDonald's, it's actually really fucking good.
Okay.
I was very surprised by it.
I tend to find that films like that are, because they're more about the kind of how it got to where it is rather than the end product, because we all know what the end product is, but it's the kind of behind the scenes story. That's why I love those kind of biopics of things like Steve Jobs and all the kind of Microsoft ones. I love the insight into how it came to be, because we know the brand and we know the product, but we don't necessarily know how it came to be. And I find those kind of stories intriguing.
Yeah. It was great. I live with my housemate used to work for McDonald's, and he kept laughing during the film because there are lines from the film which are apparently taken from the McDonald's employee handbook. So
yeah. I imagine there's got to be a lot of Easter eggs in there for anyone who's been employed there.
But yeah, it's a great film. It's well worth checking out. I think we saw it on Amazon. You can hire it on Amazon.
Okay. I'll have a look. Sounds like the kind of thing I'll enjoy.
Yeah, it's a great film. And Keaton's just superb. But yeah. Right then, it's deep breath time.
Dinklage, Peter Dinklage, Dinklage. Game of Thrones.
What an episode.
Holy shit!
I think that's probably one of the best of the entire run.
Yeah, honestly, I have never had this reaction to an episode before. And it came fairly early on when Arya came back to Winterfell. And then just seeing her and Brienne of Tarth, I was just like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever!
Yeah, and I love the Who Trained You? No one.
Yeah.
That little payoff.
Yeah, totally.
It was great. And Littlefinger's face as well, because he's looking down with a smile, and then he sees that she's got cat's paw, and he's just like, "Oh fuck, I gave that to Bran.
Yeah.
I've got no power over this guy." But what was interesting, again, my housemate pointed this out to me, is the entire time they're watching the fight, Littlefinger and Sansa on the balcony, he doesn't say anything. Like, in every scene like that we've seen before, he's in her ear. And in this scene, he's saying nothing. Like, Sansa's properly shut him up.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think Littlefinger is trying to drive a wedge between all of the Stark children, especially between Jon and Sansa, because I think he was expecting there just to be Sansa and she would be in the north, and then he would be able to manipulate and deal with that. What he wasn't anticipating was Jon Snow being brought in as a bastard heir, Arya to come back as the biggest badass of the universe, and Bran to come back as this weird spiritual creature who quite literally doesn't care about anyone anymore.
Yeah, no, and chaos is a ladder.
Yeah, which is something that he said very, very early on, which means, how much does Bran know?
Well, Littlefinger said it to Varys in the Red Keep. It was just the two of them. Nobody else was there. So this is the thing: is how much does Bran know? Does Bran know that Littlefinger betrayed Ned? What does he know? And is he going to tell people? Does Bran know about Littlefinger's involvement in Jon Arryn dying?
Absolutely, yeah, and Lysa Arryn and all the rest of it. It's crazy, and it's just it all got blew utterly out of proportion this week with it. Because I think that the whole thing with the dagger. I mean, why do you think that Littlefinger gave the dagger to Bran?
I don't know. What are your theories?
Because previously he'd said he knew that it was his dagger, and that he'd last seen it with Tyrion. That Tyrion had it, and then when Bran asked whose it was, he said he didn't know. So I think what he's trying to do is set Jon up as potentially being the one who tried to arrange Bran's death, and trying that Jon has tried all along to become king in the north.
Oh, see, I didn't think of that. I don't think that's the way he's going with his manipulations. I think he's more.
It would be all too easy for him just to repeat it all about the fact that it was the Lannisters, but for some reason he's not.
So I think, no, I think when it comes to the scheming, he's going to be doing something else.
Yeah, I just carry on.
In the last episode, there's a scene where the new Maester tells Sansa that Maester Luwin kept records of all the scrolls, like every Raven scroll. And as they're walking, if I had to go back and watch the shot again, but as you're watching the shot, Sansa doesn't react to that news. The person who reacts to that news is Littlefinger. He looks back at the Maester, and he's actually sent a screen at the time. And I don't think they do anything in their framing for shits and giggles. So we're meant to know. We're meant to notice that Littlefinger has picked up on that. So I think there's something, like, it could be to do with when Sansa, what was called a Sophie then, that's the actress, when Sansa wrote to Robb, telling Robb to bend the knee to Cersei. Like, there's a lot of stuff Sansa was forced to do in order to survive in King's Landing, and I think that's where Littlefinger's going to go. I think he's going to try and find some of those to try and drive a wedge between Sansa and Arya, Sansa and Jon, because Arya and Jon are tight. So if Littlefinger can drive a wedge between Sansa and Arya, he drives a wedge between Sansa and Jon by default.
Yeah, I think it's a weird one, because I think Sansa has, she's reunited with Bran and Arya, but they're completely unrecognisable from the last time she saw them both.
Yeah. But to be fair, so's Sansa at this point as well.
She is, but then again, Sansa's story is understandable. She's had a lot of shit happen to her, and she's become hardened to it. Whereas the other two have come back with supernatural powers.
That's true. Yeah. One of them's a
and
warg.
Jon as well.
Yeah. Well. Yeah,
So literally, out of all of them, she's just had a load of shit and come back just being a bit disgruntled at the world. Every other fucker's got superpowers.
Yeah. Actually, now you come to mention it, I'd be pissed.
Yeah, totally. It's like, what the fuck did I get for all of that?
Jesus, yeah, you're right. Sansa got screwed. Oh man. Yeah, that's yeah. I'd never even looked at it that way, or even considered that. But yeah, like Jon's come back from the dead, is destined to lead. Bran's a warg. Arya's a badass
that can change her face and do all sorts of awesome stuff. And what can Sansa do? She can glare at people.
Yeah, I think she's the one who's probably moved furthest away from what she wanted when she was younger, whereas everyone else has moved slightly closer.
Yeah, totally.
Oh man, poor Sansa.
Yeah, poor Sansa.
I think she'll do alright though. She'll probably survive. I imagine she'll be one of the few people who actually survives the game.
And I think that's the thing, is that I think her superpower is survival. She's gone through all of that, and she has learned how to survive under any circumstance.
Yeah, and I think she's wise to the game now as well. Like, she's definitely learned Littlefinger's game. Like, definitely. When the three of them met under the weirwood tree, and Bran showed them the dagger, she was just like, Littlefinger is not a generous man. He doesn't give gifts.
No, there's a reason.
Yeah. So at that point, you're just like, okay, yeah, Sansa is wise to this now. She's learnt from the people she's been around on how to play the game. She's learnt a little bit. She's got a bit of Cersei about her in that sort of coldness to people, not being so willing to.
Do you know what? I think Cersei. I think she's learned most of her important lessons from Cersei, and I think that she's coupled those kind of smarts with everything else that's happened to her. I think she is more dangerous than the rest of them, because while they all have superpowers, she has actual influence. Yeah.
So yeah, there was all that. There's some nice bit of politicking around. Then
and then everything went to shit.
Oh my god! And then some. I watched the HBO behind the episode featurette for this. Oh my god, the stuntmen and the stuff they did for that final battle. Holy shit. They broke records for number of people set fire in one scene.
Yeah, it honestly utter insanity. I wasn't expecting it at all. It came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, they're chatting away at the camp, and they've managed to pay off the Iron Bank of Bravos, and there's Mark Gatiss looking a bit smug about it all, and that's all very nice. And then it just the moment when he went, wait, listen, and then that was it. From there, it just, the whole tone of the episode just changed, and it went batshit crazy.
Yeah, like all the little things. There was Bronn turns to Jaime and saying you can ride back to King's Landing, because these poor infantry fuckers are about to get slaughtered, and Jaime not leaving him standing his ground, and then the charge of the Dothraki, and then that fucking dragon,
and then Drogon just coming over there. It's just like, what the actual fuck is going on?
It was spectacular. I think they were saying like in the entirety of Season 6, they had maybe 11 shots of Emilia Clarke and the dragon together. And they were saying they had 84 shots in this one episode. Yeah. Like, it was incredible. They said they set 20 people on fire in one shot, which is the most that's ever been done, because obviously health and safety reasons and stuff.
Yeah, because you've got to be able to put them all out.
Yeah, they built special harnesses so that the archers could stand up in the saddles on top of the horses while they were firing. Which I believe...
Right, because they slow-moed that, and then they all jumped off, and that was,
Yeah.
fucking...
Oh, the choreography on that was absolutely brilliant. The whole thing, it was just an incredible spectacle. But there's one thing...
I have to just give a shout-out for the running dick on Rickard joke. That's never going to get old.
Like, yeah, this was the first time Bronn could be Bronn in this series, I think. Because last time we saw him, he didn't say anything. He sort of teased him, and then this time he's back with his one-liners. Yeah. Where was I going? Oh, yeah, there was one scene. So, the battle's just started, everything's going off, it's going crazy. And then 2 white horses and a black horse sort of are behind lines, just without riders, run across the screen. Like, yes. And there's a steady pan on them. Like, they're centre screen. You're meant to see them. And I was like, what does it mean? It's got to mean something. That must be an Easter egg of something. I just can't figure out what or why, or whether I'm reading too much into it. But it doesn't seem like they frame things for no purpose. So,
well, I think that was just the way I read that was just the juxtaposition of that against the chaos of everything, and that's just them literally just fleeing the scene.
See, I started thinking the 3 dragons, maybe like 2 white ones, 1 black one. Is one going to go bad? Is one going to die? Is it the 3 heads of the Targaryens? I read so much into that.
I think for me, I think one of the dragons has to die and come back as a White Walker dragon, and that's where all the shit's going to go wrong.
Is that what's going to make Dany finally throw her weight behind Jon?
I think so.
Yeah. You could be right.
Because I think we've seen this episode that they are vulnerable and can be hurt, and I think it's going to take one of the smaller ones to get killed, and then be resurrected as a White Walker, and that's where it's just all going to go to cock.
That'd be fucking badass, though.
Oh, it would be utterly, utterly badass, but it's just going to be so tough.
Yeah.
But so... Other moments.
Bronn dropping his bag.
Yeah.
Like, I thought he was dead. At that point, when he dropped the coin purse and his gold, I was like, that's blood money. That's blood money being spilt. That's obviously foreshadowing him about to die in this combat. And I didn't want that to happen. Like,
no.
I wasn't cheering Daenerys and the Dothraki in this fight. I was cheering and sort of, cheering on Jaime, the Lannisters, and Bronn.
A lot of people were. I watched the Throne cast afterwards, and everybody was cheering on Jaime.
Yeah, yeah. So it was weird in that regard because we've finally seen main characters going at each other like this.
This is this is the first time a lot of the key players have met each other. Or seen each other in a very long time because it's all about people getting back together again. So Jon and Theon had a moment on the beach.
Yeah.
Then you have Daenerys facing off against Jaime and Bronn. Tyrion watching Jaime.
Yeah.
So
can tell he's conflicted.
Oh God, yeah, and I think even Jaime's conflicted.
Yeah. Because he now knows the truth. He now knows that Tyrion didn't poison his son.
Yeah.
He now knows that actually his dad just wanted an excuse to try and kill Tyrion. So, he knows a little bit more. Oh,
it's whether or not this is going to be enough to turn him finally against Cersei, because we know that he can see reason because he killed the Mad King. So he has, it's got to push him to that level to have him to turn against her.
Well, so, he will at some point because he's going to kill her.
Is he?
Yeah, I think the Ed Sheeran song foreshadowed it because he talks about Hand of Gold and the slaying of the Queen.
Mm-hmm.
And he is the little brother. Cersei is older by a minute or two. She's the older twin. So, he is the little brother.
So you don't think that Jaime's dead then?
No, because he's in the trailer for the next episode. That was a mistake, Game of Thrones editors.
Well, you see, My biggest problem with that. Well, there's a big question, and I have a big problem with it. So the big question first is, who took him off the horse? Was it Bronn? Was it Dickard? Or was it
Bronn.
Rickon? Or whatever he's called? You reckon it was Bronn?
It was Bronn.
You think so?
Yeah.
Or do you have proof?
No, I'm just hoping it's Bronn.
Okay. Right, okay. Yeah. I think Bronn was being badass enough in that episode to begin with. So if he did that as well, he's fucking superhuman. But my biggest problem is you see Jaime storming towards Drogon with the lance, and he's the horse is splashing all the way through the water. Simple physics says if you get knocked off, then you're in the shallow bit.
Yeah. So why was he dragging off into the fade out? Yeah.
Yeah, it was probably knee height at best.
That's artistic license, I think. We'll let them off.
Yeah, that's a crock of shit.
Yeah. But the trailer for the next episode, when they're approaching they've got the dragon on the mound, which is doing her talk. Yeah, to the left of screen is Jaime's white horse with Jaime on it. It's like, oh, brilliant, so he survives then.
Okay,
yeah.
There you go then.
So, yeah. Oh, but what an episode. Like, that was definitely full of holy shit moments. Like, when Bronn fires the scorpion at the Dothraki, and it just like pins him back against the cover. That was awesome. Like, it was so good, so good.
Yeah, utterly mind blowing end of an episode, and apparently the shortest one ever.
Shortest one of this season, I think.
Was it? I thought it would. I read something on Digital Spy about it being the shortest episode ever.
Oh, maybe, I don't know. Definitely wasn't feature length. Like we used to. But... In
all fairness, it totally made up for it if it was the shortest episode ever. I'm happy with it because it was fucking awesome.
Yeah. If you listen to this, I would highly recommend going and watch the behind the scenes stuff on that episode, though, just to get an appreciation for all the hard work that went into it. They were running like 7 or 8 camera crews, all the blocking they had to do for that sequence, all the stunt men and what they had to do for that sequence. Like, the work that went into that was just amazing. And it was a first-time director as well.
Yeah, similarly, I'd say to go back and watch the one from a couple of seasons ago, which was the Night's Watch versus the Wild Ones.
Hard Home,
yeah. Which was Neil Marshall, who did Dog Soldiers. Go back and watch that. Just some of the shots that were done in that, like the Steadicam shots, are just insane.
Yeah.
Because it's all done in one take, and it's right the way across a set with one take of action happening everywhere, and it's just utterly insane.
Yeah, they keep pushing the boundaries. They keep pushing what they can achieve, like.
And why the hell not? They've got 1 and a bit seasons left, and that's it. So
yeah, we're into single figures left. Like single figure episodes left. So
yeah. And fair play to them. They are duly ramping up the spectacle.
They are, and we're getting the payoffs now as well a little bit. I think that's probably where the episode was a little bit iffy. In like the fan service elements of the episode were almost a parody of it. It's like, I don't know.
Maybe,
it was great. It was great to see.
I think it was all justified, and I have no issues with everything they did. I still want to see more. There's a whole fuck ton of stuff that I've been waiting for. There are a lot of interesting questions left, Arya's kill list. I love how she's just so blasé about it all the time. And then it took Sansa's reaction shot of her realising that the kill list is a real thing.
Yeah. Well, it was the 2 reactions. There was the one in the crypt where she says it, I think she sees Sansa's reaction, and then I think she realizes this isn't a normal thing to have, so she starts laughing, and they laugh it off as a joke. And then later on, Bran mentions the list again, and Sansa's like, "Oh, it's a real thing."
And then when she sees her fighting, it's like, and she can actually do it as well. So
I think Littlefinger is going to end up on that list.
Oh God, yeah, because that's the thing is out of everyone, he should be on that list.
Yeah,
it's just it's insane that in amongst all of what's happened in this show, that Littlefinger still has his head attached to his body.
Absolutely, he's not getting out of this though. Like in the season trailers, like before episode 1, there was that there was the dialogue over the trailer. I think it was Sansa saying like the lone wolf dies, and like the pack is back together, and the lone wolf will die. Bran, Arya, and Sansa, they're the pack, and they're back together. Yeah. And Littlefinger is the lone wolf in this situation, and I think he's gonna fucking get his comeuppance. It's about fucking time.
What was interesting is because I've been going back and rewatching it all. It's interesting to hear, I can't remember who it is that tells the tale of the person who breaks the tradition and then has his sons fed to him, and then that's exactly what happens to Walder Frey later. Because Arya isn't part of that conversation, but she does exactly to Walder Frey what is mentioned in that folk tale.
Yeah. Websites, yeah. But they do that a lot, though, these little tales. They always foreshadow future things. Like the tales and the songs in this series all mean something. They're all going to give clues as to what's happening.
Now, there are some interesting people on Arya's list. Whether they should still be on it or not, I don't know. Like Beric Dondarrion and Thoros of Myr.
Why were they on her list? I can't remember.
Because they gave Gendry to Melisandre.
Yeah.
So basically, Melisandre gave them gold, and they gave her Gendry, who she then sucked the blood out of, and then the Onion Knight set free.
Yeah.
So we've still to see whether Gendry's going to come back or not.
Yeah. I think he will.
Because he is a loose end that is off somewhere. You know, if we get reappearances from people like Hot Pie, then I think we're going to see Gendry again.
We will see him again, because I know that he was on the casting calls for this series, so he will be back at some point.
We'll finally see what he's been up to.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, she took the Hound off the list.
Has she?
Yeah. I think there's a scene during her training. There's a scene during her training where she's doing the whole lie test thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she's
yeah. And Jack and Hagar says that she's lying when she says the Hound.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I mean, because so in my rewatch, I'm at the point where it's Arya and the Hound wandering around, and it's stunning. I just love the Hound. I'm so glad he didn't die.
Yeah.
He's one of my favourite characters. He's such a bastard, but then he comes back and he redeems himself, and all sorts of stuff catches up with him, like the other episode where, because he's back with Beric Dondarrion and Thoros of Myr again, and he goes back to the house of the people that he stole their money and all their stuff from, and discovers that the father had murdered the daughter and then killed himself, and that was all because of him.
Yeah, well, he's doing some growing up, isn't he? Like he's
on a massive redemption arc.
Yeah, huge redemption arc, and I think that redemption arc is going to culminate in him taking on the Mountain.
How could he possibly win against Zombie Mountain?
I don't know, but maybe it's not about winning at this point for him.
maybe it's just about him having a good death.
Yeah. Or standing for something.
Yeah,
So, yeah. We'll see.
Craziness.
Yeah. What else from that episode? Oh, the conversation with John and Davos on the wall, and the callback to Stannis Baratheon and his grammar Nazism.
Ah, yes. Less, fewer.
Yeah. Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, it was stunning. If you haven't watched it, then sorry. This has been full of spoilers. We should probably have said that at the start. But if you haven't watched it,
I think we
now,
did. We said we're talking about that episode of Game of Thrones.
Okay.
I think, and we'll put a blatant thing in the show notes to say we are talking about this week's Game of Thrones. Anyone who hasn't seen it by the time this comes out, come on, seriously, what are you doing?
Yeah. It's your own fault. Cool. I think that ties us up nicely.
I think it does.
Yeah. Okay then, folks. That's all for this episode. Thank you very much for listening. I've been Brendan.
I've been Spindles.
And until next time, take care and be excellent to each other. Ta-da!